All right, so we all think we know the story of Snow White, right? The sweet princess, the evil queen, the seven dwarves. But what if I told you the story you know is, well, the sanitized, cleaned-up version? Today, we're digging into the original Brothers Grimm tale, and let me tell you, it's a surprisingly dark and brutal story of survival. We're going to break it all down, starting with the one question that kicked this whole thing off. This line, this is where it all begins. It sounds so simple, right? Just a little bit of vanity. But this one question quickly spirals into a deadly obsession, a jealousy so fierce that it drives every single dark, terrifying twist in the story we're about to explore. So here's our roadmap. We're going to follow Snow White's journey through 5 key stages. We'll start with the queen's deadly vanity, then move to the little bit of safety she finds with the dwarfs. After that, we'll cover the 3 assassination attempts, the poisoned apple that leads to her darkest moment, and finally, a fairy tale ending that is, frankly, absolutely brutal.
Okay, part 1. In most heroic stories, there's a call to adventure. But for Snow White, yeah, it's not so much a call as it is a violent shove off a cliff. Her very existence becomes this unbearable threat to the queen, forcing her out of her home and straight into a fight for her life. So who is Snow White? Well, she's literally the child her mother wished for. Skin like snow, lips like blood, hair like ebony. But this incredible beauty, this perfect innocence, it ends up being a curse. It's the exact thing that triggers the pure evil of her new stepmother, the queen. And here it is, the moment the fuse is lit. The queen's magic mirror, you see, can't lie. And get this, when Snow White is just 7 years old, the mirror delivers this devastating news. The queen's pride doesn't just get hurt, it absolutely shatters. And in that one instant, her jealousy boils over into pure, murderous rage.
The queen's reaction is just so swift and unbelievably cruel. She doesn't just want Snow White gone, she wants proof. Cold, hard, bloody proof. So she orders a huntsman to take the little girl into the woods, kill her, and then carve out her heart as a trophy. Now brace yourself, because this is the detail that almost always gets cut from the modern stories. The huntsman, thankfully, takes pity on Snow White and kills a wild boar instead. He brings its heart back to the queen, who then has it cooked and eats it, fully believing she is devouring the heart of her 7-year-old stepdaughter. It's absolutely horrifying. All right, so after that incredibly close call, Snow White escapes into the forest. She crosses the threshold from her old world into a new, terrifying one. She's all alone, running for her life when she stumbles upon a tiny cottage that just might be her salvation. So she goes inside, and everything is tiny and perfect. There's a table with 7 little plates and 7 little cups. There are 7 little beds, all neatly made up. In the middle of all the chaos and fear of the forest, she's found this little island of perfect order, a little glimmer of hope. When the dwarfs get home, they find her and hear her story. They feel sorry for her, and they offer her a deal. Now, this isn't some fairy tale charity. It's a contract for survival. They'll protect her, sure, but in exchange, she has to be their live-in housekeeper. She has to cook, clean, and keep everything tidy. And the dwarves, they're not naive. They know exactly what kind of evil they're dealing with. So they give her one single life-or-death rule. Do not let anyone in. It's a chilling warning, and it totally sets the stage for what's coming next. Which brings us to part 3. This is where the story really turns into a thriller. The queen is relentless, and she's about to put Snow White through a series of terrifying tests, each one a disguised attempt on her life. You're about to see just how obsessive this woman is. So, back at the castle, the queen is feeling pretty good about herself. She struts up to her mirror, totally confident she's won, and then the mirror drops this bombshell. You can just imagine her face when it reveals that Snow White is still alive. She realizes she's been betrayed and decides, fine, I'll do it myself. And she doesn't just try once, oh no, the queen comes at her 3 separate times in 3 different disguises. First, as a peddler, she tricks Snow White and laces her up so tightly she can't breathe and collapses. The dwarves save her. Then she comes back as another old woman with a poison comb. It knocks Snow White out cold. Again, the dwarves save her. But the third time she comes as a farmer's wife with her most brilliant and deadly trap yet. And that third attempt, well, that's the ultimate ordeal. This is the climax of the queen's attacks, a trick so clever that it finally works.
It leads to Snow White's symbolic death, which, in a twisted way, sets up her eventual reward.
This is honestly genius, in the most evil way possible. The queen creates an apple that looks perfect. One half is beautiful and red, the other is pale white. To earn Snow White's trust, the disguised queen takes a bite from the harmless white side. And that's all it takes. Snow White lets her guard down and takes a bite from the beautiful poisoned red side.
And just like that, she drops to the ground in a sleep so deep it looks like death. The dwarves are heartbroken, they can't wake her up, so they place her in a glass coffin. Now, a prince comes by and is just captivated by her beauty, and he begs the dwarves to let him take the coffin. But here's the part everyone gets wrong. Forget true love's kiss. That's not what happens here. As the prince's servants are carrying the coffin, one of them trips. The jolt knocks the piece of poison apple right out of Snow White's throat, and she wakes up. It's a total accident.
And that brings us to the grand finale. Snow White is back from the dead. But her happy ending is only half the story, because the fate waiting for the queen is one of the most gruesome, hardcore punishments in the entire Grimm's collection.
So, Snow White is all set to marry the prince. Meanwhile, the evil queen gets a wedding invitation. Her vanity just can't handle it, so she asks her mirror one last time who the fairest is. The mirror says the new queen is. She has to go. She has to see this rival for herself, and it's her own vanity, the very thing that started all this, that lures her right into the trap.
When she arrives at the wedding, she's immediately recognized. And the punishment, it isn't quick, it's a public spectacle. They bring out a pair of iron shoes that have been sitting in a fire until they are glowing red hot. She is forced to put them on and dance. She literally dances herself to death in agony in front of everyone. A truly brutal end for a brutal queen.
So when you strip away the Disney polish, you're left with this, a story about cannibalism, multiple murder attempts, and public torture. It really makes you ask, why were these original stories so incredibly dark? Well, maybe they weren't just for kids. Maybe they were cautionary tales for everyone, stark warnings about what happens when vanity and jealousy run wild. And it makes you wonder what we've lost, or maybe what we've gained by making them so much nicer.